Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Intro to Opik, our second workshop, first after our launch event in the Commit to Change Hackathon. Slowly people are coming in, so please, when you get in, do say hello. Make sure that your chat is set to everyone so that we all see your messages, and we will get started very soon. Let's have a look and make sure our speaker, Abby, is ready to come up on stage with us and we can jump right in. Wow, Nash is back at 1:05 a.m. Very, very impressive. For those of you who were here yesterday, and maybe ended early because it was very late for you, the recording is available for you to catch up on. Nash, I love the dedication, but you can also go to sleep and watch the recording if 1 a.m. is a bad time for you to be learning. Abby, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We'll get you visible to everyone now. I know you have a second monitor that you want to share from. Do you want to promote that now? Because I got a decline when I sent you the request.
I'm okay on this one for now. There's just a brief part where I'll need to switch over later.
Cool. Not a problem. Okay, in which case, we've got people gradually coming in, but I think we're good to get started and jump right into the introduction to Opik.
Amazing. Thank you, Rebecca, and welcome everyone again to our second session. I'll start by sharing my screen, just as I did yesterday. I have a really short set of slides to go over, but I'll keep that short and sweet as possible so we can get into some actual code, which I know is what you're all actually here for. So, once again, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here today. If you weren't here yesterday, just a little bit about myself. I'm Abby Morgan. I'm an AI research engineer and developer advocate at Comet. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you can see a QR code that links to my LinkedIn account. I saw a lot of you connected with me yesterday, which is awesome. If you haven't and you'd like to, go ahead and scan that QR code now. But I do just have to mention that friendly messages are always super, super welcome. And I love to hear from you all. But if you have specific questions about the hackathon itself, please put those in the Public and Code Discord channel. If you have a question, there's a good chance someone else will also have that same question. And if you put it in the public Discord instead, then everyone can benefit at the same time from you having asked in public. And also makes my life a lot easier because I don't have to answer the same question as many times. But the most important part, or the most important reason that I ask that is just to make sure that the competition stays fair and no one feels like anyone's been given a competitive advantage because I or any of the other judges have been talking with someone in private about perhaps tips or advice on what to do with their project. So if you do have, if you want to say hi to me on LinkedIn, I would love to hear from you. But for competition specific questions, please keep all of those communications public. And then one last quick housekeeping note. During this session, if you guys have any questions about OPIC and you're enrolled in the hackathon, please post your questions to the public Discord channel. I am going to try to leave some time at the end of the session to answer your questions that you put in the chat, but yesterday we had way more questions than we had time to get through, and I want to make sure I'm able to answer you all. So if we run out of time again today, if you post your questions to the Discord, I can go in afterwards and answer you there. Unfortunately, as soon as we close this webinar session, all the chat messages disappear. So the only way I will be able to access questions that we haven't had a chance to get to is if you also post them in the Discord channel. Awesome. So let's dive in. I want to do a really, really brief recap of our session yesterday, just for anyone who might have missed it, and just to review a couple of key points that will still be relevant today. If you're here live right now, I promise I'm going to keep this super brief. If you're watching the recording, and you don't feel like you need this recap, feel free to fast forward here. Yesterday's session is also live on YouTube, so if you want to catch the whole thing, this is the QR code to bring you there. But just to recap some of the main points, we started with the big why behind AI evaluations. Evaluations can sometimes feel really boring compared to all the exciting work folks are doing building with LLMs and agents, but they're super important and they ultimately are what turn a cool prototype into something you can actually ship and iterate on confidently in production out in the real world. Um, Evaluation is essentially just the feedback loop that makes improvement systematic. So to that second point, evals are what turn random iteration or guesswork into a more of a scientific process that allows you to improve in a systematic way. Otherwise, uh, we don't really know if we're getting better if we introduce a regression or if we're getting if we don't really know if we're getting better or if we introduced a regression or if we're just seeing cherry-picked examples or outliers that um, may be irrelevant. Usually outliers are still irrelevant, but so basically, evals help us make decisions on what to ship, what to roll back, um, help us to debug failures, and just ultimately they help us build systems that people can trust in the real world. So it's really that difference between a fun, cool prototype that works in a specific scenario only on your computer. We've all been there. And a system that works out in the real world for lots of different folks. So we also defined what an evaluation is as a structured, repeatable measurement of system behavior against criteria we care about. So structured is key. If you can't run the same eval that you're running today again next week and interpret the differences between now and then it's not really an evaluation. It's more of just a product demo. We went over how most useful evals have four ingredients: a target capability, that could be fluency, that could be relevance, that could be toxicity or harmfulness. They also have a test set that reflects the world that you care about, and that's very important because here's where we start to differentiate between benchmarks and AI product evals. So a benchmark is going to be that really generalized, um, standardized uh, data set for a lot of different broad examples. But what you care about for your product is getting a test set that reflects particularly the world you care about, including those edge cases. Um, and then the other two ingredients are just a scoring method that can be a human annotation or an automated evaluation metric. Um, and finally, a decision rule. So once you have those scores, um, how are you deciding what to do with them? Are you, putting that new feature into production? Are you rolling back? What are you doing with it? We emphasized that evaluations the outputs of evaluations don't only have to be a number. You can also output concrete examples. You can output slices by category. You can output error types or error taxonomies that help you improve your system. So there's a lot of different ways that evals can look. They're not just numbers. And finally, I already touched on this a little bit, but benchmarks. Um, we talked about how benchmarks, which are a word that gets thrown around a lot and is a little bit confusing when talking about AI evals. Are real benchmarks are really helpful for broader comparisons, but they're not the same as product evals. Benchmarks are standardized. They're often intended for a wide range of use cases. On the other hand, product evals not only have to match your use case, but they also have to match your users, your tools, your workflows, constraints, and failures. So benchmarks are more for general testing. Products are for, you know, rigorously evaluating your product for your use case. And then I think the last piece of recap is just that uh, evals have to sort of by default start with observability because you can't evaluate what you can't first see. Um, for agents especially, the final output of an agent or agentic system is never going to be the whole story. You need the full trace, including what context was retrieved, what prompts were used, which tools were called, and all the intermediate steps. Um, And this is really important because LM systems don't fail like traditional software. They're non-deterministic. That means many tasks don't have a single correct answer, and they won't output the same answer every time given the same input. Um, and the sequence we ended on, what in order to use evaluations to improve your systems, was that first we have to observe. With those observations, we can begin to understand what's happening. Once we understand what's happening, we can begin to evaluate. And then once we have evaluations, measurements of success, we can begin to improve those evaluation scores. And that's going to be the perfect segue into today's session, because Opik is designed specifically to make that sort of observability and evaluation um, loop practical, easy, simple to implement. So I think that might be it. Yes. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is dive into some real code. I want to demo Opik really quickly, and here's what you're going to want to watch for. Um, you're going to see observability, which I just talked about. You're going to see how a single trace shows an agent's full workflow, and then you're going to see how we take that trace and we evaluate it within Opik, how we score runs and compare them across versions. So I'm going to start with sort of a high-level experience. Um, just to sort of give you the value of the whole entire process. And then after I finish this quick demo, I'm going to zoom in and we're going to work with the minimal code, the basics to get you started running in Opik. So first, I just want to see what sort of like an end goal project might look like. This is a very basic agent, so you may get a lot more complicated than this, but this is what the final product looks like. And then hopefully once you see the value there, um, there'll be a little bit more motivation to learn all the basic steps to get there. So the QR code on this slide will bring you to the code I'm using to create this project. So you can follow along. You can recreate the project yourself at home if that's useful to you. It may be helpful. I know I personally learn the best by building and by sort of like picking things apart and breaking them and then putting them back together. So I want to include that code here. And just to reiterate, if not all of this makes sense just yet, what I'm about to show you, don't worry about it. Just to give you a broad idea. And then after the demo, we'll break everything down so you can build from scratch. So um, now, Rebecca, I'd like to switch over to my other computer, if that's all right with you.
Yep, let me invite you up, and you should get a invite. Hopefully it's this Abby Morgan and there isn't a third Abby Morgan in the crowd.
You never know. Okay, great.
The crowd maybe can't see this, but we've got an inception of Abby's. Let's see if we can. There we go. We can see Abby from all angles.
Yeah. That is pretty funny, actually.
Oh, you maybe want to mute one of them.
Yes. You myself. All right, here, I'm gonna. Is that better now?
Nope. Maybe the browser that is open, like the tab with the Zoom call on, mute the tab as well, or like mute the whole laptop and only have one with sound coming out. Oh no, that's still very.
Wait, I think I'm
Sorry, everyone.
Is that better?
Yes, that's much better. We can only hear one of you.
Third time's the charm or something. Okay. Well now I am. Oops. Okay. Demos are never go smoothly, right? Um, let's see. Let's just try my.
While you're sorting out your getting your screen up, I'll just answer this question about the Discord in chat because this is something that I've been getting a lot of DMs about. In order to get in the dedicated hackathon Discord, once you're in the Encode Club server, you'll need to connect your account on the platform where you've made your project, hopefully by now, and you've got all your hackathon information. And then once you do that, your Discord will automatically get a role which puts you into the private channel. So if you are sending questions in the kind of public channels, then I will flag to you that you need to get the role, and then you'll have access to the dedicated hackathon channel, and you'll be able to message with the mentors and everything. Let's see if we have other questions that we can cover while Abby's getting prepared. Thank you for sharing the repo from the QR code. I know a QR code on a call is always hard. Abby, find. Abby, I've sent you another invite, so you should be joining me back up again.
Okay, sorry guys. Looks like I got kicked out. Okay, cool.
I can see two of you now. Like the same image, but twice.
So strange. I wish I could explain. It's not like we work in technology, right?
Nah, it doesn't sound like us. We'll keep you on speaker view and it should be fine.
Okay. Let's see. So this is the code in the project, that QR code, the project that was attached to that QR code that I just had up. And I've been running this a little bit this morning already, but I will just go through really quickly what we have here. So this is, again, just a really basic agent. It's a recipe generator. It consists of two separate LLM calls. So basically, it's going to ask the user for a list of ingredients in their fridge. And once I enter those, the first LLM is going to suggest a recipe that could be created using those ingredients. And then the second LLM call is to research how to create that recipe. So say the first LLM decides we're going to make chicken parmesan. That will then be sent to the second LLM, which will research exactly how to cook chicken parmesan. So the first thing that I wanted to highlight was just that oops, what do we have here? Just how easy Opik can be to integrate into your code. So in this case, we literally just have, I mean, we've imported Opik at the very top, but then we literally just have this one call right here. And in some cases, you can, depending on if you're using an integration or not, you can use just the track decorator, which we'll see in the code breakdown in a few minutes. This is a little bit fancier, but in either way that you decide to integrate Opik into your code, it is often as simple as just 1 to 3 lines of code. It's very, very simple. In this case, we're using OpenAI agents. So, and that's directly integrated with Opik, which is why we have a little bit of a slightly different way of integrating Opik here. So that said, let me just show you quickly what this ends up looking like. So like I said, I've been running this a little bit, but if I run this script right here, And I should say that this was written by my colleague, Vincent Coach. Thank you, Vincent. You might be on this call as well. Shout out to you. So when I run the script, you can see down here that it prompts me for a list of ingredients. I'm just going to think of a couple things that are in my fridge. They don't necessarily have to go together. I think I have a can of tomato sauce. I think I have some oranges. I think I have some almond milk. Those things don't sound like they would go together, but let's see what they come up with. That could be really gross. And it's wants me to create a creamy orange tomato soup. That's interesting. Maybe that could be good. Not really sure. You can see it's done the first LLM call here, the suggested recipe, and then now it is slowly in the process of filling out, of completing the second LLM call, which is actually figuring out the steps to create that that recipe. So you can keep doing this over and over again. I won't waste time doing that here because I think you get the gist. But I will move over to Comet, where hopefully you can see the results of me having run this script a few times this morning and just now with all of you. So I'm logging into my account. And then this is the Opik dashboard. So I can see here are all my recent projects. The recipe agent demo is the one that I've just been running this morning. And you can see here I have immediately a list of all of my traces. And just a quick sort of vocab refresher for anyone who doesn't already know this, because I constantly need to refresher on this. Traces and spans, the difference between a trace and a span is that a trace is the full end-to-end record of a single request or run, whereas a span is the individual step inside that trace. So for example, right here, we can see we're in our traces right now. So this is one trace, which would be the equivalent of one agentic call. I can click into that trace and you can see each individual span within the trace. So the trace is the larger end-to-end process, and then the span is the individual step within. So to that point, we want to see every step along the way of our agent, but we also want those organized into agentic calls, and that can be a little bit tricky to manually log and organize like that. But here we can see the input and the output of our agent very clearly. We can see some basic pieces of information, system metrics, and things like that, duration, total tokens, SMA cost. You'll note that I never manually logged any of this. There are other things that are automatically logged. If I go over to my columns, I can choose what I want to show. And here I'm only showing a portion of them. So just to make things a little cleaner, I'm going to remove a few things. And then we also have some evaluation scores, but I'm going to wait a second to get into those. So moving back to our traces, you can see your input and your output. Say, for example, you have an output that is completely wrong, or maybe it threw an error, so it didn't even complete the call. And I want to figure out where things went wrong. Oftentimes, just seeing the input and output is not going to be enough, as we've already discussed. So you can click into your trace and you can see each step that was taken in your agentic system to get to the final response. Now, if this particular agent, it's very basic, it doesn't have any tool calling, but if you were to use tool calling, which I suggest because it's very helpful, those would also appear in these steps with its own little, I think it's red icon. So you can sort of organize and view those things accordingly. We do have evaluations for both the trace level, so that would be the input and the output, in I think probably all cases. You can also run evaluations on specific span level evaluations. So say I had a tool call here that used the internet to research the recipe, which would be basically just a different way of achieving the same thing we've already done here. But if I had used a browsing tool to do that instead. I could, for example, put an evaluation just on this one step, this span, to make sure, for example, no inappropriate websites were visited, or, for example, that maybe my product is only going to be available to English speakers. So I want to make sure that it's not uh, going to websites in other languages. Maybe that's not an issue. I'm just sort of coming up with ideas on the spot, but I think you understand what I mean, that you can create both an evaluation on the entire trace here, as well as the individual spans within. What's also pretty cool is that uh, links are even supported. So I've run this a bunch of times at this point, and sometimes it will include links to other websites that it's used to come up with its recipes, and you can click them from right in here. We do also support uh, image files, PDFs, and we're actively working on expanding our support for other multimodal data attachments. So keep an eye peeled for that. But if you wanted to log images, we can also do that as well. And here's our metadata. Again, you'll notice I didn't manually log any of this. This was all done automatically. And basically, pretty much anything that's available from the LLM will be automatically logged here. If you're interested, for example, in the cost that you're incurring with each, which is a very common, obviously, concern in product development. You can monitor, for example, you'll automatically be tracking token usage and cost, but you can actually start creating evaluations on those numbers that we have tracked here. So back to the concept of how observability is really an essential step that you have to take in order to even start thinking about evaluations. Here we can see that automatically we have visibility into our agent in a way that we didn't have before in any other way. So we can start to think about using this data to create evaluations. So that's a little bit about what we have logged so far. And now I want to show you some online evaluations that I've already created here. And I think 3 of them are available in the project QR code that I provided earlier. So you'll see directions in that project on how to add these online evaluations to your project. So you can check those out there, and I'll also go over it in just a second. But basically, once you create an online evaluation metric in your project, every time you run an agent, this agent, you will automatically score that agent call with each of these criteria. So each of these is actually an LLM as a judge metric, which means that we're using one LLM to judge another LLM. That can obviously be problematic in a variety of different ways. But heuristic metrics are also problematic for their own reasons. So I think it's often really good to have a healthy mix of heuristic evaluation metrics and LLM as a judge metrics. And you can also find more information on what LLM as a judges are and which ones might be useful to you on the Opik docs. Specifically, if you look up geval, that will probably be helpful for you. So I told you I was going to show you how we set these up. And basically, if you go to online evaluation up here, to create a new rule, you would click create new rule here. Since I've already created these, I'm just going to show you what they look like. But this is the same screen you would see if you were creating a new rule. So you name your rule up here at the top. You do need to provide your own API keys if you're going to use an external LLM as a judge to do the evaluations. But here you have the options of, I mean, we do have some that are provided for free with Comet, but you have Anthropic and OpenAI, and then via OpenRouter, you pretty much have any model you could possibly uh, think of. So you choose your model and your provider, and then you choose whether you're creating a custom LLM as a judge or more of a code about like a heuristic, I'm sorry, evaluation metric, which would probably be written in code. And then you write your prompt here. So basically, as mentioned, I'm having one LLM judge the output of this other LLM. So I need to prompt the LLM, the judging LLM, on how to do its job as a judge. So here we've given it a scoring scale, we've given it context, and pretty much any information it's going to need to do its job of returning this score. And again, all of this information is in that project QR code, or in the project located at the QR code. So now that we have the prompt, you create the rule. In this case, I already have it created. And then you can see, as I mentioned, that I've already created all of these here. You can keep creating more if you'd like to. Another really cool feature that we have is, as I mentioned, there are obviously some problems with using one LLM to judge another LLM. So you may want to iterate on the prompt that you give your LLM judge to judge your outputs. You may want to iterate on that as well to get a better, we'll say a more faithful evaluation that is more closely aligned with what you consider successful. So in order to do that, one thing you can do is you can go over into your traces and you can manually or human annotate your traces. So here you can see that I have my automatically generated LLM as a judge evaluation scores right here. As a human, I can also go in and say, this is what I think the score should be. Then once I've done that, I can start to compare what the LLM as a judge has rated and what I have rated it. And maybe I need to tweak the prompts to my LLM as a judge or tweak the model, so that the outputs it's giving are more closely aligned with the one I, the expert human, would give it myself. But then we also know that oftentimes you don't have time to do this manually. And also, oftentimes for specific use cases, you're going to be sending these jobs to an expert annotator, say like a medical annotator or a legal annotator, someone with expertise that I, as the developer, may not have. So, in addition to this ability to manually, individually score them, we can also create an annotation queue. In our annotation queues, you basically send groups of traces to specific annotators. And that would be in the case of needing, for example, an expert annotator, or perhaps you just have a very large scale operation going and you have multiple people working on a project, and you need to sort of divvy up the job. Whatever your case may be, that can be helpful for sort of fine tuning your evaluators. We also have, as you can imagine, once I want to improve on my agent, I likely want to isolate those scenarios where my agent is having trouble, either throwing an error or creating, an incorrect answer or a harmful answer, and then keep running that agent against those problematic samples as I make changes to the code to see if my changes are improving those problems, making them worse, or neither. So in order to do that, manually, that can be pretty tricky and time consuming and just sort of messy. But what you can do here with Opik is you can choose some of your problematic samples And then you can add those to a data set or an annotation queue, as I just mentioned, but you can add them to a data set. And I can call this my problematic samples or whatever I want to call that data set, or I can add it to an existing data set. You see I have a bunch here. And then each time I make a change to my agent, I can run I can run the samples against those same inputs to see if the changes I'm making to my agent are actually improving the outputs. So that's also very helpful. I'm going to go back now to my other computer to show. We're going to sort of zoom back in really quickly. Now that you've seen the overall project, we're going to zoom back in and sort of start with the very basics of how to log just one simple trace, one simple span, and sort of start building from there now that you've seen what sort of an end project can look like. I do also want to mention before I move over, I've seen a few questions in the Discord, and this is also a pretty common question I get when I'm at meetups and hackathons about whether it's necessary to show Opik dashboards or Opik results within the product somewhere to the end user. And that's a very common question that comes up. And the answer is no. There are some situations where that might be useful, depending on what your product is. Especially if the user is involved in like a feedback cycle or something like that. But the most common and perhaps the most impactful way of integrating Opik into your code will be more behind the scenes. So you may be using this internally, just within your team, to track how the progress of your agent is going. That being said, when you do your final submission demo, you may not have Opik very visible in your AI application, but you'll just want to explain if you're applying for the Opik track. This is how we used Opik. This is how it influenced some of our decision making and helped us, find errors or find bugs, and then improve from there. And then I did just want to, I said dashboards, and that reminded me, I also wanted to show you that we do have some automated dashboards in your projects. If you go to, there's a couple different views. You can go to dashboards up here in the corner, and you'll get some pretty basic panels. You can also add your own widgets. Again, I started running this project this morning, so these all look pretty simple because they are. We only have one date's worth of information. So if you were running these over time, obviously you'd get more of like a line plot. And then the other place you can also get some nice dashboards are in the metrics tab right here. And again, this is just one day's worth, so we don't have a long pretty line to sort of show progress over time. But this gives you the gist of sort of what you would see if you were running Opik in your project over time. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back to my other computer, if you don't mind, Rebecca.
I think your other computer is still a panelist. I'm not sure if you closed the tab, but I can unpromote you and re-promote you if needed.
Okay.
Yep, definitely back.
All right, is that better?
Hopefully? Yeah, and we're back. Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys. It's my first time using a computer. Okay.
Just to flag before you share your screen again, we've got a couple of questions in Q&A that might be worth having a quick look over. It's some of the stuff, probably stuff you're going to cover anyway. But we had a question earlier about when evaluating a span, should we create one dedicated data set per span to evaluate? Philippe asked earlier. So this might be when you go over now in a kind of example, that might be worth covering. There's a couple of questions about the kind of evaluation methods, which maybe we can talk about at the end. And then Marwan just asked, how does Opik help explain why an agent failed, not just that it failed? So you mentioned earlier something briefly about that. So we'll continue, but just worth having in the back of your mind, and hopefully all the questions will be answered.
Yeah, sure. So let me move back over to, let's see. Where is this? Can you see my screen, my
Yeah,
Comet
we
screen?
can see the recipe agent demo.
Beautiful. Okay, so to answer the first question, which was, I believe, would you want to create a data set for each specific span, or you might have meant trace, or I guess it doesn't really matter. Um, you probably wouldn't be, you could. I guess I'm trying to think about how to word this. The way I would go about thinking about it is almost the opposite. So you have these examples, and you would take a trace or a span and send it to a data set to then now test future runs of your agent against. Um, and in that way, those future runs of your agent will all be tested against each of these examples. So it will be almost like a dedicated data set for those traces and spans, but it all starts with using your own data as information to inform your evaluations, if that makes sense. So ultimately, yes, each span or trace, depending on how you set it up, will be evaluated against a data set. It likely won't be different from the data set that, well, I should take that back. Say you wanted to run one evaluation on this span, another evaluation on this span. Those could be separate evaluations with separate data sets, absolutely. You're likely not going to uh, have a separate data set for this span here as you would for this span here, if that's what the question was. So I hope that clarifies that. The second question about, I believe it was, how does OPIC help you figure out not just that you have an error, but where you have an error? And again, it's just this really easy sort of way to view what's going on in your agent. So if you don't have this sort of visibility and you're just poking around, you might know that your agent call failed, but there's a lot of different places that it could have failed. Did it fail at the tool call? Did it fail at the LLM call? Maybe you had you forgot to put your API key in for the LLM, or maybe they updated some of the like the wording on the parameters or something like that. Um, it can be really hard to go back through all of the error traces and figure out exactly where things went wrong. Meanwhile, if you have something like Opic, I can go and I can see, okay, it didn't make it past recipe suggester. So clearly something failed in this step of my agent. So now I've narrowed it down where I don't have to go back through the entire trace stack. I don't have to go back through all of my code for my agent. I can just go to this one LLM call and see what happened, right? So that's sort of where OPIC can help you really locate an error. Um, that's for a pretty obvious error, I would say, but there's also, I guess you could call them maybe not errors, but um, areas for improvement, where when you're creating evaluation metrics for example, toxicity or something like that, you will likely be catching instances of toxicity that you otherwise wouldn't if you were just sort of scanning your outputs manually. So if you create these automatic evaluation metrics that then flag over here, okay, this has some toxic language in it, um, or some whatever you may be uh, evaluating for, you can easily just filter your entire data set based on that one flag or the output of the evaluation metric, and you have all of that information right there in front of you. So it makes it a lot easier to consume a lot of this information really quickly and distill it down to where are things going wrong, why are things going wrong, and how do I fix it? So I hope that helps to answer that. I do want to make sure we get to the sort of more simple breakdown, which is here. Can you see? Let's see. Make sure you're seeing my right screen. Sorry, guys. All right. Can you now see a Colab notebook?
Yeah. Yeah, we can.
All right. So this is the quick start guide that is actually provided to you within the Opik technical material. So you also have access to this. You can run it right now, you can run it later. But I wanted to go through and just sort of explain step by step what's going on. You have this really helpful markdown text to sort of give you a little bit of an introduction on what you how you can start thinking about evaluations, as well as a little mini dictionary of terms. But I'm going to leave that for you in your free time and just go straight to, uh, let's see, straight to the first code. So, and then I made a note for myself. Um, as a reminder, because I saw this question a bunch of times in the Discord server for the past couple days, I just want to remind you that Opik is 100% open source, so you can host it free and locally on your device, which gives you a lot of options for customization and just for what you can do locally. However, if you're looking to get things sort of up and running quickly, and you don't want to have to deal with all the setup involved in local self-deployment, we do also have a 100% free cloud tier. So what I'm showing you today in this collab is the free cloud tier. And the process I'm describing for how to use Opik is also for the free cloud tier. So to get started, you just need to install Opik. So I'll do that here. We'll let that start getting loading. You'll notice that this is really the only dependency we need to start capturing traces. We will use a couple other packages later on in this notebook just to because we want to work with some other frameworks, but that's all you really need to get started. The next step, once that loads, is we're just going to configure our Opik account. So this is sort of an easy command to be able to specify our API key, the workspace we want to use, things like that. There are other ways to do it as well. So if you don't want to have to manually enter this information each time you run your notebook, you can set environment variables. There's a few different ways to do it. So check out the docs for that. But here I'll show you just sort of the easiest way if you're up and getting started is we're going to run opik configure. It's going to ask me for my API key. So I'm going to go over to, let's see, back over to my Comet. Can you see my Comet account again? Hopefully.
Yes, we can.
And so it's about to ask me for my API key. So I'm just going to show you where to find it. Once you've signed up, again, it's 100% free to sign up. You're just going to go over to your account. You're going to go to your account profile picture up in the upper left-hand corner. You're going to go to your account settings, and then your API keys are right here. So you click that, copy, and then you can go back over to where to your project. Okay, so back to the collab. It first prompts me, how am I using Opik? This is again the free Opik cloud. So I click one. I'm going to, actually, I didn't actually copy that. So I'll copy that, go back over adding this in. It wants me to confirm that I'm using that workspace, which is my workspace name. And now I'm started. It's really as simple as that. If you want to specify a project name, you can do so with this little code snippet right here. I will do that in this case, but your obviously project name will probably be different. So once you have that set up, you now have this project running in the background. Um, this is sort of the smallest possible hello world trace example that you can that you can create in Opik. And this is using the track decorator right here. So you just import it from Opik, and then you place your track decorator above the definition of whichever function you want to track in Opik. So a lot of times this will be your LLM call. So within your agentic system, you're going to have an LLM call. Most of the time, the track decorator you're going to want to put above that. In some cases, you may also want to put it somewhere else. Um, and I guess just the core idea here is that you don't need to rewrite your entire application in order to get Opik up and running and integrated here. You can just sort of wrap around the with the tracking decorator, and you immediately get observability, right? You're otherwise completely preserving your code exactly as you wrote it, so it's very easy. And then I'll run this. And then all you have to do to start tracking in Opik is run this function. This function now, every time you run this function, it will automatically log everything to your Opik account. So that easy. I added my track decorator, and then every time I run this, this will be logged to Comet. You get a nice little link here where you can view it immediately. I'll click on that. Oops. So this is my other uh, I have multiple Google profiles, and this is the wrong one. So I'll bring this over to other one and show you where we are tracking that. Um, you can see right here. So exactly what I just traced. And that's my function. So going back over here, I know we only have a few more minutes, so there's definitely more I want to get into. Here we are using OpenAI, which is obviously very popular. You may use it as well. These cells just repeat the install, but we will, oops, I didn't pass. Mm, do a little hacky. Actually, I'm going to explain this, but I'm not going to actually run it, just in the essence of time, because I see we have just a few minutes left. So I have not set my API key here. To do so, you can just hard code it right here. API key equals whatever your API key is, or you can set it as an environment variable. You can use Google Secrets. I don't want to make any changes to this notebook because this is the exact same one that all of you are looking at. So if I put my API key in here right now, you all have it. Even though I trust you all, I will skip that for now. So, in order to use OpenAI, the OpenAI integration, you don't even have to use the track decorator. So anything that we integrate with directly, you like OpenAI, opik.integrations.openai. Here you just wrap your OpenAI client in a Opik track function. So similarly, just one line of code, or I guess in this case, two lines of code to get up and running and tracking. But you get observability into literally all of the system metrics, all of the information that comes back from the LLM. Then, let's see, we have, for those of you working in TypeScript, JavaScript, We have a TypeScript SDK. It's not quite at feature parity as the Python one, but it is getting close and we're actively working on it. So here's a little just jumpstart, basically exactly what we just did, a very basic hello world, but in using our TypeScript SDK. I will let you all run that on your own. Similarly to OpenAI, some other really popular frameworks we integrate naturally with are Google ADK, LangGraph, Cursor. The list goes on. You can find the full list on our website. But for example, how I mentioned, if we directly integrate um, with a framework, you'll just import that directly from opic.integrations dot whatever framework it is, and then wrap your either your agent or your client um, in that specific uh, function. And then finally here we have Cursor. Now, some of you will be building with AI tools, and that's more than acceptable. We had a question yesterday about building with N8N, and that's totally fine. One thing to note, if you are going to build with AI tools, again, that's fine, but we just need to be, as judges, we just need to be able to um, uh, confirm that everything's actually working as intended. So if you send us a really beautiful demo video, we just want to make sure that the code actually does what we see in your video. So you're more than welcome to use these AI tools, but just in your final submission, try to include either like the source code file, so I know that's possible with Cursor, or um, some like basic steps to help us just really quickly set it up on our own computers and just make sure that it runs. So I see we're a little bit over. I got through most of what I wanted to get through. I can take a few questions if you all want. Um, I don't know how much time we have, Rebecca. I know it's past one.
So the main questions, oh, we've got a couple more that have come in. Sorry. A couple of people I've asked to put their questions on the Discord because they're probably a bit deep divey for the end of the session today. But we've got a couple left that were just lighter or more higher level. Abdul asks, can we evaluate a chosen model using a combination of heuristic logic and an LLM as a judge, which is what you were speaking about earlier?
Great question. Not only can you, yes, but I would highly recommend it. I would strongly recommend against using one evaluation metric, and recommend using multiple. It's a great question.
Great. Um, how do you keep your data set relevant while iterating on the function, tool, call names, parameters, tools, etc.? Do you have to run an online evaluation with the new agent to collect new traces, or would you use that to create a new data set?
Can you repeat the first part of that question again?
How do you keep your data set relevant while iterating on the function, tool, call names, parameters? Like, so as you change your function kind of parameters and everything, how do you keep the data set relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question too. So I was showing you that sort of data set creation screen and how you could just click different traces and add them to your data set. Just as easy as it is to add traces to an existing data set or create a new data set, you can remove them. So if you find something is no longer relevant, you can just click it, remove it. You can also start from scratch. So I don't know if you noticed at one point I have dozens of different eval data sets. So you're not limited to just one. If you find that yours has lost relevance, which is a very common problem because our applications evolve over time, or our goals evolve over time, then you can just start create a new one from scratch or edit existing ones.
Um, a couple of last questions. Is it possible to add external data aside from the LLM response into the data table that you were showing earlier?
Um, External data. So if you wanted to, for instance, log images, you can do that. Um, you I hope I'm understanding this correctly. I mean, any like natural text, of course, you can manually log anything you'd like to that table. Like I said, we have very basic support for images, and we're working on on audio, and we're working on video. So it's pretty much confined to text and images at this point, but we're working on expanding that.
Okay, nice. We have a lot of questions about SDKs and the differences between um, I think the functionality of different ways that you would integrate Opik. I would suggest putting questions like that into Discord for a more detailed answer that you can refer back to. But for all the people asking for links and stuff, all the links are in the resources section on the hackathon page. Please do check them out. I don't want to put them in the chat now because you will literally lose them as soon as we end the call. So please do check out the resources section. The OPIC documentation is there. The collab template that Abby has used today is there. And all the other useful links, including like the ideas document and everything. It's all over there. So please do have a look at that. We have an out of context question, which is, are there any Opik/Comet events in Boston? So I would shout out your Luma calendar for that. Is that right, Abby?
That's great. We don't currently have any on the board, but we are planning some, so stay tuned.
Very nice. So yeah, follow Comet on Luma, which I'm sure lots of you who are joining us today already do, and that's how you've found out about the hackathon. But definitely do that. As for the other questions, please do put them on Discord so that you can have a more thought out and detailed answer, because we are out of time today. Thank you everyone for joining us for our second live session. We have one final one this week, which is with Abby's colleague tomorrow, who wrote the recipe agent. So he's going to be teaching us how to prompt, I think, or prompting is dead, how to improve on prompting. So thank you everyone for joining us. Any last comments, Abby, before I start to wrap up?
No, I will be available on Discord, so throw all your questions my way, and I'm happy to help however possible. But again, try to keep them public.
Yeah, please do. Everyone, the recording of the session will be available. It will be on YouTube. I'll post about it on Discord, but you can always find it in the past event section on the platform as well. We will see you all tomorrow.
Bye, guys.